In January 2021, a middle-class financial analyst by the name of Keith Gill changed the face of retail investing forever. Using stage names Roaring Kitty and Deep Effing Value, Papa Gill presented convincing DD that GameStop shares were undervalued. With quantitative analysis and extensive fundamental research, Roaring Kitty demonstrated to the entire internet that GameStop, then trading at $5 a share, was due to rocket higher. We all know the story that follows. As traders of all shapes and sizes were convinced by our man's persuasive argumentation, the onslaught of buyers sent GameStop flying to a high of $400 per share. Short sellers were obliterated in the process. Despite plenty of volatility since then, GameStop still trades for around $100 on a split-adjusted basis. This legendary short squeeze gave rise to a new term, meme stock. Everyone now wants their dipshit penny stock to be the next GameStop, and they'll go to any lengths to convince you to buy, even if it requires deception, even if it means making you think that they are the next Roaring Kitty. This is the story of perhaps the ugliest of them all, of how a band of jackasses inspired a meme cult stock around Faraday Future, and in doing so, left an entire generation of Bagholders in their wake. Faraday Future is an electric car company that set up shop in Los Angeles in 2014, largely funded by federal and California tax incentives. Since then, it has produced a total of 11 functional vehicles that it gave away for free to its own board members and to influencers. In the last 10 years, it has gathered $0 of revenue. 4 of its 5 concept cars never got past their clay and styrofoam floor models. The company is delinquent on rent on all of its physical properties and was almost evicted from its headquarters in LA. And the company's founder filed for personal bankruptcy. This combination of outstanding financials and impressive vehicle production led to a 99.98% share price decline since its IPO via SPAC in early 2021, necessitating 2 reverse splits that made 1 share at IPO worth 1/240th of a share today. This is one of the least financially sound companies in existence. Infants born in refugee camps have better balance sheets than Faraday. And to the brilliant minds of Whimsical Sandwich and Maximum Purpose, this was the perfect candidate for the next GameStop. Step aside, Roaring Kitty, and let the adults handle this one. On the morning of May 14th, 2024, a brand new Reddit account with no post history and the generic name of MoodHaunting3482 shared a simple post to the Roaring Kitty subreddit, titled simply FFIE with text, "This penny is going to soar, rockets." It quickly gathered a suspiciously large number of upvotes and comments from likewise new Reddit accounts making their first comments ever. And I don't want to make too many assumptions, but when you've got Reddit accounts that have never posted or commented, suddenly sharing their FFIE positions with great fanfare, you might have a case of astroturfing. And if you're looking to deceive apes into piling onto your penny stock, a subreddit dedicated to Roaring Kitty is a great place to find them. With practically zero DD to back up Mood Haunting's post, a surprisingly large number of Redditors with no post history were suddenly convinced that FFIE was the next play. Interestingly, some of them also never posted again. Nevertheless, with a slew of rocket emojis peppering the sub, already evidence of FOMO began to manifest. The monkey see, monkey do bandwagon effect went full force, and actual traders started piling in. It was at this time that the first ringleader of the cult revealed herself. User Whimsical Sandwich bought 417,000 shares at a 36-cent average, even dumping her AMC and GameStop shares to make the switch. With 3 rocket emojis as usual, the apes were ensnared by her audacity. When she shared her position, she also proposed that apes with significant TikTok followings start pumping the stock. By late afternoon, a second aspiring ringleader emerged by the name of Maximum Fucking Purpose, an obvious call out to deep fucking value. Max shared 2 important pieces of information with the apes. 1, Faraday was trading for over $4,000 in 2021. And 2, short interest is over 95%. Both of these were patently false, but it's not clear if Max knew they were false, or if he's just dumb. Either way, his job was laser focused. Get these monkeys to buy shares, no matter what it takes. The $4,000 figure Max offers is on a reverse split adjusted basis. Since Faraday had reverse split twice since its 2021 IPO, each present day share was 240 IPO shares. This $4,428 figure in early 2021, divided by 240, is about $18.45, a perfectly reasonable price for a COVID rally SPAC Mania IPO. FFIE never actually traded anywhere near $4,000. And to his second point, Max shared this bot-scraped market data showing that FFIE had about 40 million shares outstanding, 36 million of which were sold short, resulting in an over 95% short ratio. Assuming this information is accurate, this stock is primed for a short squeeze. 95% of traders are pricing it for bankruptcy. Surely there is no reason to verify this very unusual information. Why would you, when you're affected by FOMO? Which one matters more in the mind of a speculator? Getting accurate financial data or the number of rocket emojis on Reddit? And I'm asking that question seriously. Which one matters more when the desire for gains has thoroughly infected your mind? The ape army answers this question for me. In April and early May, FFIE's daily volume typically hovered around 10 million shares, occasionally seeing a volume spike to between 70 and 100 million. But on the day FFIE first appeared in the Roaring Kitty sub with Whimsical Sandwich and Maximum Purpose manning the bridge, 1.5 billion shares traded hands. That's about 150 times its month's prior average daily volume, and still about 15 times its previous volume high. A few rocket emojis next to the ticker FFIE, sprinkled with a little astroturfing and some janky DD, is all it took to inspire a rabid army of apes to turn their sights from GameStop to Faraday. The day prior, the stock was trading for 6 cents. 1.5 billion shares later, at market close on the 14th, Faraday had blasted to 36 cents, breaking 50 cents in after-hours trading, a remarkable 750% gain that, in the minds of the ape army, predicated a massive short squeeze unlike anything seen before, poised to even dwarf GameStop in magnitude. Overnight, there was a huge shift in the Roaring Kitty subreddit. People stopped talking about GameStop and started talking about Faraday almost exclusively, much to the mods' chagrin. It was as though Roaring Kitty's legacy had been dethroned by this redonkulous penny stock. Likewise, the FFIE subreddit, which had been effectively dead for years, suddenly saw a huge surge in membership from about 2,000 to 50,000, meaning about 40% of Roaring Kitty subreddit members were following FFIE. Many of them were of the peasant class, owning just a 3-digit number of shares. But there is strength in numbers. As early as 4 a.m. on Tuesday, May 15th, the sub was flooded with overstimulated apes, balls deep in Red Bull and adrenaline. This was the Faraday Army's declaration of war against unspecified hedge funds and short sellers. Comments like, "Take it all and give them nothing," and "I am here to stick it to the man" became a common theme. Battle cries of "fuck the hedgies" and "hold the line" inspired scrubs with 3-digit portfolios to go all in. These unspecified hedge funds were in the crosshairs of the inspired retail soldiers, and people began musing about $1,000 share prices and how FFIE would fund their lavish lifestyles. Keep in mind this company has earned $0 of revenue in the last 10 years, and operates at a $500 million annual loss. But that didn't matter. All that mattered was that short sellers would get squeezed by an increasing stock price. All that mattered is line go up. User Uber Primata tried to convince the YOLOers that FFIE was a scam company, citing the fact that the company is delinquent in its filings, is at risk of being delisted from the NASDAQ, and the accounts pumping FFIE are clearly fake. But his warnings fell on deaf ears, and the post was downvoted. This right here demonstrates the groupthink mentality that comes back to bite these traders later. Worse, the advice they did listen to came from fellow FFIE traders that believe things like the stock market is open from 9 to 5. But in the meantime, there was money to be made. At market open, a flurry of early trading sent the stock to a sky-high 82 cents. The rocket emojis, calls to battle against still unspecified hedge funds, the outlandish price targets continued to run rampant as the stock closed in on $1 shortly after open. Although there were some large buyers among the paupers, most of these traders bragged about their 3,000 share positions like it was a large stake, not realizing they were riding the coattails of 6-figure traders. Whimsical Sandwich showcased an over 92% gain on her shares for a gain of $113,000. The fanboys went ballistic, beginning to idolize the largest FFIE investor among them. Whimsical spent the entire day basking, commenting on various Faraday posts, explaining her position in detail. At this point, calls for people to pump the stock on message boards and social media became explicit. On both Roaring Kitty and FFIE subreddits, and a weird one called Ape Ladies, users were asking influencers to blatantly pump FFIE, Whimsical Sandwich herself wished to summon Swifties to buy shares. Fortunately, Taylor Swift fans usually don't have much interest in stonk and so do not have a broker to trade on, mashallah. Similarly, user NickTotNewYork tried to make hashtag Fuel the Rocket happen, but it quickly lost steam. Yet despite these social media pumps not getting much traction, the stock still managed to ride up to 98 cents that day. Traders began to spread the word that if FFIE gets to over $1, then it would no longer be at risk of delisting from the NASDAQ. This shows a fundamental misunderstanding of listing requirements. Not only does a stock have to reach $1, but it has to trade over $1 for 10 days to avoid delisting. This level of nuance was simply out of reach for most of the apes, and the desire to hit this $1 milestone was unmatched. The following morning, on Thursday, May 16th, Faraday opened at 82 cents and quickly set off for the stratosphere, shattering the glass ceiling to a high of $2.35. Despite several trading halts, the stock continued sailing with unrelenting force. Whimsical Sandwich took the vanguard and rallied the troops with calls to hold the line through trading pauses. Maximum Purpose told the apes to hold shares with every ounce of strength. Their courage was further invigorated when an article appeared on investorplace.com. The 17-sentence article briefly summarized FFIE's trading action over the previous 3 days, mentioning how it outperformed GameStop and AMC that week. It also reiterated the point that the stock was allegedly being shorted to 95%. The author, Samuel O'Brien, was clearly in their corner, possibly an investor himself. It was at this time that the mods on the Roaring Kitty sub had enough of watching helpless paupers simp for a handful of pumpers. Whimsical Sandwich's final post on the sub, in which she called for a $100 per share price, was promptly removed. But like former President Cheeto, the Sandwich Lady turned this setback into a positive, stating that FFIE apes were being persecuted for not towing the Roaring Kitty line. This persecution in turn created an additional flood of attention to the Faraday sub, where the traders celebrated the stock's high flying. Whimsical Sandwich promised to post daily, and showcased at midday her over $500,000 gain. Maximum Fucking Value, always simping, used the opportunity to profess once again how the fate of the investing world rested on the outcome of this fight against the unspecified hedge funds. He states, "That's their fear, the bosses. We all get paid tomorrow and then dump our checks into FFIE. They're trying to starve us out, but fuck that." It is this combination of gains porn from the Sandwich plus saber rattling from Max that continued to firm up buying pressure from the apes. To the pumpers, this simply cannot be a stock rising because people are buying. It needs to be a war, because the GameStop bag holders migrating from Roaring Kitty to FFIE need a win against the Wall Street fat cats. And if Max gives them a target, they will ride at dawn. In fact, users began establishing Whimsical as the figurehead of the movement, analogous to Roaring Kitty himself. Whimsical took the crown, she was queen, and Max her side bitch. By the morning of May 17th, the apes were fearless and hungry. The stock opened at an unbelievable $2.69, 44 times its price a week prior. By late morning, the frenzy of FOMO and hedge fund hatred sent the stock to new highs with each passing minute. Every single trader was deep in profit, and even those who bought a measly 1,000 shares were now raking in serious gas money. By 10:30 a.m., Faraday pushed the limits of time and space, sailing to a ridiculous high of $3.77. The unspecified hedgies were in shambles, stampeded by retail traders and their gains on gains. Sandwich, for her part, was sitting on gains of over 938%. Her position had crested $1.5 million. Life-changing money. But she would not sell. She would hold the line. The FFIE subreddit traders loved her reiterated call for $100 per share, believing, or at least convincing her followers to believe, that she expected a $75 million payout from this play. It was a state of euphoria for the chimps, who saw this as their unshakable march to wealth. In no time, an unspecified hedge fund would be bankrupt, and the apes rockin' Versace and Lambos. And that's when things really get fun. As all pump and dumps go, there is a high watermark before the inevitable dump. This moment was that Faraday Army's watermark. At 11:30, an onslaught of sellers performed a stone-cold stunner on Faraday, slicing the share price in half in the space of an hour, just as quickly as the meteoric rise to over $3. The struggling car non-manufacturer was being relentlessly bonered. By market close, Faraday was down over 75% from its high, closing at just $1.01. The drop was so fast that there was no time to think. How could this happen? What weapon did the hedge funds use to artificially depress the price? According to Cousinator, who must have learned what volume was earlier that day, the momentum is still bullish because selling pressure was higher at midday than at market close. Therefore, this 75% drop was transitory. Whimsical Sandwich reposted questionable DD from user Hold the Line, who declared this to be a short ladder attack, in which hedge funds trade shares back and forth to each other at repeatedly lower prices. Here's a pro tip. If you own shares of a meme stock, and someone says a short ladder attack is driving the price down, then the trade is cooked. Short ladder attacks do not exist. If they did, then the hedge funds trading them would suffer massive losses as they pass these FFIE shares back and forth to each other. Prices don't drop because someone placed a limit order. For every short sale, someone has to buy. And if a hedge fund is buying shares that another one shorts in order to sell them back later at a lower price, then the hedge fund that bought loses money. Consulting Google Trends, it's almost comical to see that the term short ladder attack did not exist before Wall Street Bets took on GameStop, and it only seems to get discussed when a meme stock is dropping. But nonetheless, FFIE traders entered their cope stage and clung to the narrative that this drop was a brutal counterattack by short sellers using illegal tactics to keep the stock at bay. Now was the time to reload. Roaring Kitty commenters decisively shat on FFIE holders, declaring the whole play a pump and dump. Max tried to counter Dunk, but failed to convince. Resentful FFIE holders band together to establish the Discord server Big 3 Stonks, where they could cope and seethe in their echo chamber together. Whimsical posted her position at the end of the day, revealing a huge drop back to $436,000, a loss of about $1.2 million in 4 hours. But she was allegedly not worried, as this ambush was just a hedge fund ploy, and Faraday was still on its way up. The other bag holders cheered her as their own Roaring Kitty messiah, gawking at her still 100% total gain. With the market closed over the weekend, it was on Discord that Max Purpose really proved his mettle. Whereas on Reddit, he was mostly Whimsical's cheerleader. He ran the show on Discord. He proclaimed that his Reddit account was suspiciously deleted just as the stock was tanking on Friday, almost certainly a concentrated effort by Reddit and unspecified hedge funds to silence him. This was a clear indication that the apes still had the upper hand. They must stay on the offensive and counterattack quickly, otherwise the hedge funds wouldn't have resorted to such an aggressive move. But while trying to rally the troops on Discord, Whimsical and Max were meanwhile desperately posting FFIE pump fluff on unrelated subs, hoping to attract more capital to their scheme. To no avail. They needed more firepower, fast. After substantial saber rattling over the weekend, the apes indeed showed up on Monday the 20th, briefly driving the stock back up to $2.25 near market open, finishing around $1.80. Whimsical proudly shared her $760,000 portfolio in victory. But her celebration was premature. Despite Max's best efforts to rally the boys, Faraday slowly trended down for a week. Meanwhile, Whimsical sought to introduce some Scottish YouTuber who clearly has no idea what he's talking about in order to convince bag holders that the technical analysis on FFIE is bullish. If you want astrology for meme stock traders, have a look for yourself.
Undecided. Price is still pretty much within a range at the moment. And we've not really kind of...
The information failed to convince. Infighting started among the apes, as they called one another diamond-handed bitches if they sold, traitors to the movement even, for selling a penny stock. It was their fault the hedge funds were winning, because they did not have the courage to hold the line in this existential war. What they didn't realize is that it was all for naught, from the beginning. The risk of investing in a company that is 6 months delinquent on its regulatory filings is that you, as the investor, don't have accurate information about the company. It was discovered on May 29th that back in February, FFIE had issued 400 million new shares of stock, diluting their current shareholders by 10x. This would have been really good information for investors to know, but Faraday, being delinquent on its filings, never informed investors that it had done so. When Max told everyone that Faraday had 40 million shares outstanding, 36 million of which were sold short, the actual number of shares outstanding was 440 million. The short ratio was less than 10%. There was no short squeeze, because there weren't enough shorts. The reason no one knew this in mid-May was because the company didn't file its paperwork. This was too much to swallow. Whimsical shared her last FFIE post, showing a virtually flat position as the stock crashed down to 40 cents. From being up 1.5 million to being entirely flat, her cope was palpable. She also expressed intent to stop posting on Reddit because of all the hate she was getting. Their traders, all of whom are grown men and women, began to turn on their masters for telling them to hold while the stock tumbled. Many accused Max and Whimsical of selling shares during the pump while telling others to hold the line, and that Whimsical's now flat position was photoshopped. But despite this cannibalism, Max and Whimsical had their cult, with Whimsical the promised whale and Max handling the propaganda. Some traders refused to accept reality and abandoned Reddit to follow the pair and several other whales to the Big Three Discord exclusively. And then it got worse. I know this might sound ironic coming from me, but if you're in a Discord server dedicated to a single stock, there is a really good chance that it's an echo chamber. And good discussion does not take place in echo chambers. Keeping it real for a minute, if you are doing stock analysis, and your analysis begins with the conclusion that the stock will go up, you will manufacture imaginary reasons for why it should go up. You will trick yourself into believing that all news is bullish, because you are starting with the conclusion and working backwards. That's high school essay level stuff. That's not an investment thesis. Max and Sandwich's goons believe that FFIE performing its third reverse split in 2 years is a good thing. In reality, reverse splits are not a good thing. Ever. Faraday being sued for lack of rent payment at its headquarters is not a good thing. It is not a good opportunity to find less expensive accommodations overseas. It is an indication that they have no money. The board members meeting a Saudi prince is only a good thing if there is paperwork involved. In the case of Faraday's board going to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, this is called tourism. They used company money to go on vacation. If you remain unconvinced by how damaging an echo chamber can be, let's consider the following. A week after the big pump to over $3, it was discovered that one of the Big Three Discord mods by the name of Legend determined that the rally was adequate for his needs, and holding further would exceed his personal risk tolerance. In complete defiance of the Big Three server's tenets, Legend dumped his entire stake at almost the very top to cash out a ginormous bajillion% gain. Versus his 7-cent buy price, his gain was a respectable $52,800. He knew that doing so would subject him to the tremendous scorn of the Faraday soldiers, who looked to him as a leader among their movement. If they discovered he sold, he'd be publicly drawn and quartered. Despite his best efforts to hide the move, he inadvertently exposed himself by sharing a post about his position in GWAV on Robinhood, which showed he was 100% allocated to this new stock, holding no Faraday at all. Worse, he deliberately tried to hide this information from the server, leaving them to hold the bags while he ditched. The apes went scorched earth on Legend, dragging his name through the mud back to the Garden of Eden. Whimsical, in typical pumper fashion, tried to silence all conversations of Legend's sale, including deleting any comments on Discord that described the trade until after the market closed. But she drew the line at dragging Legend personally, as everyone is responsible for their own trading decisions, and Legend had every right to sell. We can only imagine the troops' confusion. Here was one of their heroes dumping shares and lying about it, and their queen helping him cover for it. Were all the whales dumping? Were they betrayed? Legend rode off into the sunset, never seen again, while the apes began infighting with callous fervor. This became known as the Faraday Civil War, which is a term I just made up now. This civil war was a schism between opposing factions. Big Three on one side, led by whale Mapsky, who professed holding shares no matter what. On the other side was the rebellious Whimsical Sandwich and her loyalists, including Max. The infighting burned hot and fast, and the casualties piled high metaphorically. In the end, Whimsical and Max retreated to establish a new server called Yacht Club, knighting several new simps as their inner circle, named Go Blood or Go Blued, Eerie Inc., and the Scottish YouTuber Robster, all of whom are allegedly not allowed to wear shirts. They continued pushing FFIE from a more egalitarian and fundamental viewpoint. After all, there is so much to be bullish about with this company. Mapsky's fighters denounced this ridiculously named Yacht Club, while Yacht Club itself pushed back. It was vicious and personal. Mapsky banned from Big Three anyone who asked a reasonable question about FFIE's future. Even mentioning the name Whimsical Sandwich was met with a timeout or ban hammer. Meanwhile, at Yacht Club, Whimsical still mans the bridge with her shirtless lieutenants. And my favorite part of all, based on their success at Faraday, the next obvious move was to create a crypto-based mutual fund right there on Discord. And since this will be a diversified smart contract-linked DeFi protocol on the Solana or ETH Level 2 blockchains with unspecified liquidity and value injected into the project, it apparently doesn't need to be licensed in any way. Ultimately, Sandwich also admitted to selling all of her FFIE shares at a small loss, $1.5 million pissed away, despite some early boasting of this DeFi protocol's gains. Robster hasn't shared results in a month. It's not clear what's happening with this project now. So here we are, from short squeeze darling that would make DFV look like a serf, to unlaunched DeFi protocol and a whole slew of bag holders. This is the fate of FFIE traders, as those who remain steadfast watch their remaining balance bleed out. We went from the stock is shorted, so let's squeeze it and then sell, to then I missed the rally, but this company has such a bright future that I'm never selling, to this morning, user Educational I6960 stalking the Faraday headquarters to see if the building is still operating. To Whimsical, Max, GoBlood, Robster, Eerie Inc., and Mapski, I thank you all for allowing me to watch this journey, even though you timed me out on your server for asking for a link. Your dedication to the hustle of poor folk is beyond reproach, and the fact that Whimsical lost all her gains shows a level of devotion to the cause that is hard to find. I humbly offer all of you the crowns of regards. Please accept them with pride. And to Legend, although you are kind of a chode, I have to give credit where credit is due, as you are the only Faraday army leader who came out of this in the green. You are worthy of your name, and I offer you the crown of kings.
Who wants to be king?
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the action.